What's up, Commanders Nation? It's Monday night, February 2nd, 2026. And bro, if you thought this off-season was going to be chill, you were dead wrong. Adam Peters just dropped the biggest bomb of the year so far. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say what's coming could change the entire direction of this franchise for years to come. We're talking pass rushers, explosive tight ends, and draft decisions that'll define whether this team keeps building or stays stuck. And listen, I know a lot of y'all are nervous. I know after what we went through this season, every move Peters makes feels like it's carrying the weight of the world. But fam, this is exactly what we wanted. A GM who owns the holes in the roster, who doesn't sugarcoat anything, and who's ready to go full throttle at the team's weaknesses. So buckle up, because today we're breaking down 3 major stories that are going to shape the future of the Commanders. And trust me, the first one is going to blow your mind. Story 1. Adam Peters confirms the obvious. Pass rusher is the #1 priority. Bro, he finally said it. Adam Peters, in his end-of-season press conference, did something very few GMs have the guts to do. Publicly admit that his team has a massive hole at a critical position. And he didn't beat around the bush or use that boring corporate speak we all hate. He was straight up, clear, and honest. Certainly, another pass rusher is something we're definitely looking for. Whether it's in the draft or free agency, I think we've got a lot of good options in both areas. Pause. Let me breathe, because this is huge. Listen, y'all don't understand how important this is. It's not just that Peters is acknowledging the problem, it's that he's telling the entire world he's going after that weakness with everything he's got. And when a GM of his caliber says that, it's not a coincidence. It's a statement of intent. It's a message to agents, to scouts, to other teams. We're going all in on a pass rusher, and we're not stopping until we get one. Now, why is this so critical? Because Peters himself has talked about the 5 pillars of a successful roster. Passer, pass protector, pass rusher, pass defender, and playmaker. And fam, the Commanders already have 2 of those 5 pillars locked in. Jaden Daniels is the passer. Josh Connolly Jr. is the pass protector. But that 3rd pillar, the pass rusher, has been a black hole on this roster for years. And Peters knows it. He admits it. And now he's going to do something about it. But here's where it gets interesting, bro. Because Peters also said something I loved. I wish the draft came before free agency. And I'm 100% with him. Why? Because building through the draft is always more sustainable long-term. Rookie contracts are cheaper. You've got more control over the player. And if you hit, you've got that guy for 4 to 5 years at a manageable cost. But of course, the draft comes after free agency. So Peters is going to have to navigate both markets smartly. Let's talk free agency first, because that's where things get expensive. Real expensive. Trey Hendrickson, one of the most consistent pass rushers in the league, has a projected market value of $25.4 million per year. $25 million. Fam, that's more than some teams pay their quarterback. Khalil Mack, even though he's up there in age, still has a projected value of $18.4 million per year. And Joey Bosa, who's had injury issues but is still a big name, is sitting at $13.7 million per year. And I'm sitting here thinking, do we really want to drop that kind of cash on a vet? Look, I'm not going to lie. Hendrickson is a beast. Dude's been putting up double-digit sack seasons consistently. But $25 million? That's a huge commitment. And if there's one thing we've learned about Peters, it's that he doesn't like overpaying. He wants value. He wants guys who not only produce, but do it at a price that doesn't wreck your cap space. And with the Commanders still building, dropping a quarter of the budget on one guy could be risky. Khalil Mack is interesting because, even at 35, he can still produce. But here's the issue. How many years does he really have left in the tank? 2? 3? And if you're paying him $18 million a year, are you building for the future or just plugging a hole short term? That's the question Peters has to ask himself. Joey Bosa, on the other hand, is the youngest of the 3, but also the riskiest because of his injuries. The guy is incredible when healthy, but how many games has he missed the last few years? Too many. And if you pay him 13.7 million and he gets hurt again, you just wasted cap space you could have used elsewhere. I personally think Peters is going to pass on these big names and look for something smarter. Now the draft. Oh, the draft. This is where things get really interesting, fam, because this year's pass rusher class is deep. It's not just one or two names, it's a class with talent in every round, and that gives Peters options. A lot of options! Let's start with the big names, Ruben Bain Jr. from Miami and David Bailey from Texas Tech. These two are the ones everyone's watching as potential first-round picks. Bain Jr. is a monster. The guy's got a mix of speed, power, and technique you don't see often. But here's the issue. A lot of scouts think he's going to inside in the NFL instead of staying on the edge. And if that happens, then he's not the pure pass rusher the Commanders need. David Bailey, on the other hand, is more traditional. He's a classic edge rusher with a motor that never quits and elite bend around the corner. But here's the thing, bro. Both of them are probably gone before the Commanders pick at number 7. And if that happens, what does Peters do? This is where the strategy gets interesting. Because Bain Jr. and Bailey are off the board, Peters could do something really smart. Take the best player available at number 7, whether that's Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, or Makai Lemon, and then go after a pass rusher later in the draft. Why? Because like I said, this class is deep. It's not like other years, where if you miss the top 2 names, you're screwed. There's talent in the second, third, even later rounds. And that brings me to Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. This dude is a massive sleeper. He doesn't have the hype of Bain Jr. or Bailey, but he's got the tools. He's got the speed, the instincts, and the production. If the Commanders can snag him in the second or third round, that would be a steal. But here's the master move Peters could pull off, and this is something very few GMs have the guts to try. Double dipping. What does that mean? Signing a pass rusher in free agency and drafting one in April. Sounds crazy, right? But think about it. If Peters signs someone like Joey Bosa, assuming the price drops, and then drafts someone like Howell, suddenly you've got 2 new pass rushers on the roster, one with experience and one with upside. That's how you build real depth. And bro, depth is what separates good teams from great ones. Now let's talk about Dorrance Armstrong Jr., because we can't ignore the elephant in the room. Armstrong tore his knee up this season, and while there's hope he'll come back, we don't know what shape he'll be in. Is he coming back at 100%? 80? Or is he going to be a shell of what he was? Nobody knows. And that's why Peters has to operate like Armstrong doesn't exist. He's got to build this roster, assuming he has 0 reliable pass rushers. Because the truth is, fam, right now, he doesn't. And that brings us to the conclusion of this story. Adam Peters is at a crossroads. He's got options. He's got cap space. He's got picks. But he's also got pressure. Because if he doesn't fix this pass rusher problem, this team is going to keep hitting the same ceiling. And after what Jaden Daniels did this season, after how close we got, we can't afford to waste this window. So fam, the question isn't if Peters is going to get a pass rusher. The question is how? Free agency, draft, both. And honestly, I think it's going to be a combo. I think he's going to make a smart move in free agency. Probably not a huge name, but someone with value. And then go hard in the draft. Because that's how you build a roster that doesn't just win now, but keeps winning for years. Okay, bro, but hold up. Because if you thought that was it, you're wrong. While Peters is planning how to land a pass rusher, there's another conversation happening inside the Commanders' front office. And this one's about the draft, about depth, and about a decision that could completely change the team's strategy in April. And listen, this is something nobody is talking about enough. Story 2. The edge depth in the 2026 draft changes everything for pick number 7. All right, fam, let's talk about something flying under the radar, but crucial to understanding the Commanders' draft strategy. Because while everyone's locked in on Ruben Bain Jr. and David Bailey, there's a reality starting to take shape. Those two probably won't be on the board when the Commanders pick at number 7. And I know that sounds scary at first, but listen, this might actually be the best thing that could happen to this team. Let me break down why. Adam Peters was at the Senior Bowl this week, and he wasn't just there to watch Bain Jr. and Bailey. He was there to check out the depth of this edge rusher class. And bro, what he saw was something you don't get in every draft. Legit talent in every round, not just one or two guys. This is a class where you can find a starter in the 3rd round, where you can find an instant contributor in the 5th. And that, fam, changes everything. Because here's the issue with pick number 7. If Bain Jr. and Bailey are already gone, do you really want to reach for an edge rusher just because it's a need? Or do you take the best player available, knowing you can still get a quality edge guy later? And me personally, I think Peters is going to do the second thing. I think he's going to grab someone like Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, or Makai Lemon at number 7, and then go after an edge rusher in the 3rd round with pick number 71. And before you say I'm crazy, let me show you why this makes sense. First, let's talk about why Bain Jr. and Bailey probably won't be there. Bain Jr. is a generational talent. The guy's got it all: speed, power, technique, instincts. But like I said earlier, a lot of scouts think he's going to move inside in the NFL. And if that happens, teams that need help on the interior are going to jump on him fast. Teams like the Titans, Panthers, Giants, all of them are in position to take him before number 7. David Bailey is even more obvious. He's a pure edge rusher. And there are teams out there desperate for that. The Raiders, Jets, Broncos, all of them pick ahead of the Commanders, and all of them need a pass rusher. So the odds of Bailey falling to number 7 are low, not impossible, but low. And this is where Peters' strategy becomes brilliant. Because if Bain Jr. and Bailey are gone, Peters can do something very few GMs have the discipline to do. Stick to his big board. Take the best player available, regardless of position. And fam, there is talent at number 7. Sonny Styles from Ohio State is a safety who can do everything. He can cover, tackle, blitz. He's the kind of player who elevates an entire defense. Caleb Downs from Alabama is another elite safety with instincts you can't teach. And Makai Lemon from Indiana is a cornerback with the kind of athleticism that makes you forget he's a freshman. Any of those 3 would be a home run at number 7. And the best part is, you wouldn't be forcing a pick just because it's a need. You'd be building the roster the right way, taking the best talent available, and trusting that you can fill other needs later. And this is where the Senior Bowl becomes key. Because while everyone was watching Bain Jr. and Bailey, there were other edge rushers out there dominating. And the first one I gotta mention is Gabe Jacas from Illinois. Bro, this dude was the star of the Senior Bowl. Rep after rep, he was wrecking offensive tackles. And it wasn't just power, it was technique, it was timing, it was a mix of everything you want in a modern pass rusher. Jacas had an incredible season at Illinois. He was productive, consistent, and he's got the tools to be a day 1 starter in the NFL. And the best part, he might be available at pick number 71. 71. Fam, that's a steal. If Peters can land Jacas in the 3rd round, that could be one of the best values in the entire draft. But here's the catch. After the Senior Bowl, Jacas might rise into the 2nd round. Because when you dominate like that in an all-star game, scouts start paying attention. And if Jacas keeps climbing up big boards, he might be gone before the Commanders get a shot at him. But even if that happens, there are more options. Derek Moore from Michigan is another name I loved at the Senior Bowl. This dude's motor never stops. He's the kind of player who gives 110% on every snap. And that's something you can't teach. He's also solid against the run, which matters because the Commanders need someone who can rush the passer and stop the run. Danny Dennis Sutton from Penn State is similar. High motor, consistent, and ready to contribute right away. Both of those guys could be available at pick number 71, and either one would be a massive upgrade over what the Commanders have now. But here's where things get really interesting, because there's one name no one is talking about, and that name is Nadam Tucker from Western Michigan. Bro, this guy was one of my favorite surprises at the Senior Bowl. At 6'3", 250 pounds, Tucker has the perfect mix of strength and speed. He can bull rush offensive tackles with pure power, but he can also flip the switch and hit you with speed when he needs to. And the most impressive part, He knows when to use each tool. That's football IQ, fam. Tucker had a ridiculous season in 2025. 14.5 sacks, 61 pressures, and 21 tackles for loss. And that was at Western Michigan, not a Power 4 school. But at the Senior Bowl, going up against top prospects from big conferences, Tucker didn't just hold his own, he dominated. And that tells me the talent is real. PFF has Tucker ranked as the number 158 prospect in the draft, which means he could be available in the 5th round at pick number 145. And bro, if the Commanders can land Tucker in the 5th round, that would be one of the biggest steals of the draft, because this guy has the potential to be an NFL starter, and you'd be getting him with a day 3 pick. That's how you build real depth. And here's the master move Peters could pull off. Picture this. Peters takes Sonny Styles at number 7, then grabs Gabe Jackas, or Derek Moore, or Danny Dennis Sutton at number 71, then takes Nadam Tucker at number 145. Suddenly, you've added an elite safety, a starting caliber edge rusher, and another edge with developmental upside. That's 3 quality defensive players in one draft, and all because you had the discipline not to force a pick at number 7. That's how you build a winning roster, fam. Now, I know some of y'all are thinking, but bro, what if Jackas and Moore and all those guys are gone before pick 71? And that's a fair concern. But here's the point. This class is so deep that even if you miss on those names, there's more. There are edge rushers in the 4th round, in the 5th, in the 6th. It's not like other years where if you miss the top guys, you're out of luck. There's talent everywhere. And that, fam, is what makes this situation so unique. Because Peters isn't boxed in. He doesn't have to force anything. He can be patient, trust his process, and build this roster the right way. And after seeing how he handled last year's draft, I trust he's going to do exactly that. All right, bro. 2 stories down, 1 more to go. And this last one is interesting because it's not about the draft or defensive free agency. It's about the offense. Specifically, a position most people thought was already settled, but suddenly has become a big question mark. And fam, if the Commanders make this move, it could give Jaden Daniels a weapon he's never had before. Story 3, Isaiah Likely and the future of the tight end position in Washington. All right, fam, let's get into something I did not expect to be talking about this offseason, the tight end spot, because honestly, after watching Zach Ertz this past season, I thought that position was more or less handled. Yeah, Ertz is older. Yeah, he's got his limitations, but the dude could still produce, right? Well, turns out things just got complicated because Ertz tore his ACL at the end of the season, and now there are rumors swirling that he might retire. And if that happens, the Commanders suddenly have a huge hole at a critical position. And this is where Isaiah Likely enters the chat. Likely is a tight end from the Baltimore Ravens who's been one of the most explosive weapons in that offense when given the chance. The guy's got speed, athleticism, and hands. He's the kind of modern tight end who can line up in the slot, run routes like a wide receiver, and still block when needed. And fam, if there's one thing Jaden Daniels has not had in his career so far, it's a tight end with that kind of versatility. Let me paint the picture for you on why this is a big deal. Jaden Daniels is a quarterback who thrives when he's got weapons that can create separation. He needs receivers who can win one-on-one, who can get yards after the catch, and who can stretch the field vertically. And Likely can do all of that. The guy ran a 4.83 in the 40-yard dash at his pro day, which is fast for a tight end. He can run seams, crosses, and turn short catches into big gains with his whack ability. Now let's talk about why Likely is even available, because for a long time, everyone assumed he was the future in Baltimore. Mark Andrews is a beast, but he's getting older, and Likely looked like the natural heir. But then, at the end of the season, the Ravens gave Andrews a massive extension, and that basically shut the door on Likely's future in Baltimore, because you can't pay 2 tight ends like they're stars. Spot rack projects. Likely to land a 2-year deal worth $17.6 million, which is reasonable for a tight end of his caliber. Not cheap, but not outrageous either. And for a team like the Commanders, who've got over 40 million in cap space. That's totally manageable. Now, CBS Sports listed 3 teams as potential landing spots for Likely: the Eagles, the Commanders, and the Chiefs. And honestly, all 3 make sense for different reasons. The Eagles need to replace Dallas Goedert, who's a free agent. The Chiefs might lose Travis Kelce if he retires. And the Commanders might need to replace Zach Ertz if he hangs it up. But here's the thing. The Commanders are the best fit. Why? Because they've got the cap space, because they've got a young quarterback who needs weapons, and because they've got a win-now window that's wide open. The Eagles already have a loaded offense, and adding Likely would be more of a luxury than a need. The Chiefs, well, if Kelce retires, sure, they'll need a tight end, but they've got other, more urgent needs. The Commanders, on the other hand, need this, and here's where it gets spicy. Because if the Commanders sign Likely, suddenly Jaden Daniels has a completely different arsenal. Picture this: Terry McLaurin on the outside, Jahan Dotson in the slot, and Isaiah Likely at tight end. That's 3 weapons who can win one-on-one. That's 3 guys who can stretch the field. And that's exactly the kind of offense Cliff Kingsbury wants to run. Likely also solves another issue: the lack of a tight end who can both block and catch. Zach Ertz was solid as a receiver, but he wasn't an elite blocker. Likely, on the other hand, can do both. He's not the best blocker in the league, but he's competent. And in Kingsbury's system, where the tight end is often in motion or lined up wide, that's more than enough. Now let's talk about the risks. Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows with Likely. The guy's only been a part-time starter in Baltimore, which means we don't have a huge sample size of what he can do as the number 1 option. He's also had a few issues with drops, though nothing major. And finally, there's the question of whether he's really worth $8.8 million per year, which is what SpotTrack projects. And honestly, I think he is worth it. Because here's the thing: the Commanders are in a win-now window. Jaden Daniels just had a historic rookie season. The defense is improving. The roster is young and hungry. This is not the time to be cheap. This is the time to give your quarterback every tool he needs to succeed. And if that means paying $8.8 million a year for an explosive tight end, then do it. Also, think about the impact Likely would have in the red zone. Jaden Daniels is already solid in the red zone, but imagine having a 6'4" tight end with soft hands and the athleticism to create separation in tight spaces. That's an automatic mismatch against linebackers and safeties. And in a league where games are decided by touchdowns, not field goals, having a weapon like that is crucial. And here's the master move Peters could pull off: sign Isaiah Likely in free agency. Then, in the draft, take a developmental tight end in a later round. Someone like a day 3 project who can learn behind Likely and eventually become the future. That gives you immediate depth, immediate production, and a long-term plan. That's how you build a roster the smart way. Now, I know some of y'all are thinking, but bro, what if Zach Ertz doesn't retire? And that's a real possibility. But even if Ertz comes back, what kind of shape is he gonna be in? The guy tore his ACL at 35. Coming back from that at that age is brutal. And even if he returns, he's probably not going to be the same player. So either way, the Commanders need a plan B, and Likely is the perfect plan B. Plus, having Likely and Ertz wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. You could rotate them, keep both fresh, and give Jaden Daniels options depending on the situation. Ertz on 3rd downs, Likely in the red zone, both in 2 tight end sets. That's versatility, fam. And versatility is what wins games in today's NFL. Finally, let's talk about the competition. The Eagles have less cap space than the Commanders, which means if it turns into a bidding war, Washington has the edge. The Chiefs are probably bringing Kelce back, which takes them out of the picture. So really, this comes down to the Commanders versus the Eagles. And with the cap space Washington has, the need they have, and the window they're in, I think the Commanders are the favourites to land Likely. And if they do, bro, this offence is going to be dangerous. All right, fam, that's it for today. 3 stories, 3 massive topics, and 3 decisions that are going to shape the future of the Washington Commanders. Adam Peters is going all in on fixing the pass rush. The depth in this year's edge rusher class gives him options he wouldn't have in other years. And Isaiah Likely could be the final piece that takes this offense to the next level. But listen, this is just the beginning. The offseason is just getting started. And we already know Peters isn't the kind of GM who sits still. He's going to make moves. He's going to surprise us. And he's going to keep building this roster the right way. So fam, if you made it this far, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the comments. What move do you want Peters to make first? Sign a veteran pass rusher? Go all in on the draft? Or bring in Isaiah Likely and give Jaden Daniels a brand new weapon? Because I want to hear what you think. And I'll see y'all tomorrow with more news, more analysis, and more Commanders hype. Because this doesn't stop, bro. This never stops. HTTR, fam, let's get it.